Touchdown Tampa Bay, you're listening to the Pewtercast.
Welcome to the Pewtercast. I am Brent Allen, your host, joined as always by my good friend Ren Daxt. Ren, we've got a good show on deck for tonight, buddy.
We do. We just had a really good conversation. SR, Scott Reynolds from Pewter Report. There were some things that we wanted to talk about. We talked free agency, we talked draft, and, we also brought up some topics that aren't out there, no one's talking about. And, hey, I'll take a pat on the back for that because that's hard. But but that's when when we sort of get somebody that we really like talking football with on the pod, get them in the same room. That's just how these conversations start to go, and it was it's good stuff.
Yeah. So you guys are definitely going to enjoy that interview. Scott Reynolds, once again, pewterreport.com. Ren, we also are going to be taking a look, kind of an update to the free agency situation. We had a really great episode go out right before the free agency period kind of started. It's kind of day one after the tampering period, called State of the Buccaneers. If you guys haven't listened to it, you want to go listen to that because this is going to kind of be a little bit of a part two to that episode. And Ren, I got to tell you, apparently a lot of people out there really liked that episode because that one blew up. So thank you to everybody who downloaded that episode.
Yes,
you guys
10 million downloads and counting. Thank you.
Yes, it's just continuing to tick. And so thank you guys for everybody who's downloaded that. And we're gonna follow all that up. So Ren, we've got a lot to get into, but first on deck is our interview with Scott Reynolds. That's today on the Pewtercast.
You just dropped your mock draft a couple days ago, and last week the Fab Five, and there was actually two things I really want to discuss in those things. First, we'll dive into your Fab Five, where you talked about flooding, sort of like flooding the positions. We've seen Jason Light do it. You mentioned the article. We did it on the defensive line. He's done it wide receivers. He's done it at tight ends. With the we know that Jason Light likes to sort of be ready to actually play a full season before he gets into the draft. From the moves that he's made so far, like where are some of the positions that you think that the Bucs, maybe they can't afford it, but you would like to see add, a couple more guys at those certain positions?
Yeah, I think for me, when you look at the veteran cornerback, I think that's the one spot they're really lacking right now. If the season were to start today, you'd have Vernon Hargreaves as one starter and Carlton Davis as the other. Those guys have one interception between the two of them. And so I think that getting rid of Brent Grimes, certainly a good idea, great idea, but they really need to find a veteran cornerback, I think, to just help that room out. I like the addition of former Kansas City Chief Kevin Ross, the Rock, the cornerbacks coach. I think that he did a great job out in Arizona under Bruce Arians, and I think that he is going to really help take some of these young guys to the next level. But having a veteran in that room, and more importantly, starting opposite Carlton Davis with Vernon in the slot, I think is really critical to the team's success. And then I think also running back. Right now, this team is punch drunk on Peyton Barber. And I get it. I think Peyton's a good running back. Bruce Arians loves him. Jason Light really likes him. They re-signed him, and I think Peyton put himself in a good position where if he has a good year with better blocking up front in this Bruce Arians offense, he could really cash in either in Tampa or somewhere else next year. But listen, it's a 16-game season. Peyton played dinged up down the stretch last year. And Ronald Jones, you could not go into 2019 expecting this guy to bounce back and expecting him to just become a second-round draft pick caliber player, because he showed nothing of the sort last year, and in a multitude of opportunities in the preseason, and then in a handful of opportunities in the regular season. So right now, and I know they re-signed, or they signed Andre Ellington, who was with Bruce out there in Arizona, but the nuts and bolts of it is he didn't play last year. He's been injured, and I think they're extremely weak at the running back position. And I think that they need – I'd love to see them sign a guy like Isaiah Crowell, who's out there, and then even draft another running back. I love Darrell Henderson out of Memphis, maybe in the second or third round, and I think this team likes him too.
Now, speaking about that, I'm going to sort of bounce back over to the draft now, because I think these two subjects sort of crisscross. You had, in your latest mock, round 3, you had Memphis running back Darrell Henderson. If the Bucs bring in someone like Cromwell with the need, sort of like an interior linebacker, cornerback, depending if you go edge or inside, rusher in the first 2 rounds, one of those might be there, interior offensive line. If they bring in someone like Cromwell, would you sort of drop the running back need till later in the draft? Even though I know you're really probably high on Henderson. Yeah, I think so. If you sign Crowell to a multi-year deal, then I think that's the case. But really, otherwise, if you put it off and say, well, we're going to go get more of like a complimentary type back later in the draft in the 5th or 6th round, then you might be opening up yourself a little bit for that dilemma next year. Because let's say you draft a 5th round running back and he's a serviceable guy, but you've got Andre Ellington's contract is up next year. Let's say Rojo doesn't develop, he's a bust. So you have nobody in the hopper. You've got Peyton Barber, whose contract is up, and if you only sign Crowell for 1 year, which if they did sign him, they probably would sign him to a 1 year deal. So then you got to hit the reset button all over again at running back. So I think if they do sign Crowell, it probably pushes that running back need down a little bit further, like you said. But listen, I'm a big believer in letting competition sort itself out, and I don't care if this team drafts a running back in the 2nd round again. If they got Henderson and Jones and Crowell and Barber, if those are your 4 running backs, then that's a hell of a lot better than what they have right now. So in my opinion, I'm not opposed to doing that. I just know sometimes that these general managers, Jason Light included, sometimes they kind of check the box and they think, okay, I'm done here. And we didn't see that last year with the defensive line. We really saw Jason Light go overboard with the defensive line, and thank God he did. And not just defensive tackle, but defensive end. So, I would like to see him flood the running back position like the way I described.
Scott, let me ask you about that, because we were all in the same room with Bruce Arians when he was particularly talking about Peyton Barber. And, he was you could hear it in his voice. You nailed it where you said that he is like punch drunk in love with Peyton Barber. Like we got a running back. And we actually even played that clip on our show on a previous episode. You're there at One Buck. You have inside contacts and you talk to people. Like is Peyton? I know we just signed him to a 1 year deal. And they were trying to sign him to a multi-year deal, but like, is the consensus that he really can be that star kind of running back, or is this because you hear a lot of Bucs fans also saying he's not the guy that we're going to be going forward with. Like he may be a 1 or 2 year stopgap, but he's not the guy going forward. Like, it seems like from what we're hearing, they think it's the opposite. But what's really the feeling there in the building about this whole deal?
Well, the feeling at the building is that they think that he has star ability. I think he has starter ability. I think that he can be a starter. And if you look back at what that means in Tampa Bay Buccaneer history, I mean, Eric Rhett was a starter. Reggie Cobb was a starter. Ernest Graham was a starter. And I think that Ernest is in – I'm sorry, I think that Peyton is in that Ernest Graham type category. I think that he is a guy that if you give him enough carries, he can get 1,000 yards. But is he a 1,400-yard back? Is he even keeping with the Buccaneers theme, is he a Cadillac Williams when healthy caliber player? No. Is he a Doug Martin Pro Bowl caliber type player in the 1,400-yard season mold? No. Is he a Warwick Dunn type running back that's capable of a 1,300-yard season? No, he's not. And so for me, I'm of the opinion that you always try to upgrade the positions. And I think that Henderson, in my opinion, is that type of player. I think that he can be a real special back. He reminds me an awful lot of a slightly smaller Kareem Hunt, but a touch faster, and maybe even more like a D'Angelo Williams. Remember him, the Carolina Panthers former running back? Well, he played at Memphis. Reminds me an awful lot of him. I think that Henderson's a little bit more of a straight ahead speed kind of guy, where D'Angelo was a little bit more of a wiggle, quick area, quickness kind of guy. But I would not want to be married to Peyton Barber for the long term. Would I want to date him? Sure. But I don't know that he is the long-term answer for this franchise at the running back position, unless he just takes his game to the next level that I don't see coming in 2019.
Are you calling Peyton Barber the Tim Tebow of running backs?
Well, I'm just saying that I think he's a good running back. I don't know that he's a great running back, and I think there's some at One Buck Place that think he's great, and I don't subscribe to that.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, we heard a little bit about, Peyton talk for like 15 seconds after he signed his contract, and he knows what he has to do. He talked about being a third down back, picking up the blitz, actually becoming a receiver. I'm excited to see it. I'm a little leery like you are, but I wouldn't bet against the kid from what he's done since he's been here. But you talked about setting the reset button, and, I'm active on Twitter, and I've pretty much just sort of come down to the fact that the Bucs need to go interior defensive line at 5 if they don't trade down. So that's going to be, fingers crossed, Quentin Williams drops to us or Ed Oliver. And the reason I said that, if you look forward to next year, like, who do you know for sure is going to be on the interior of this defense line, going to be on the team? Like, the same situation is going to be with McCoy. Bo Allen's a free agent.
Yeah.
Nacho's not the answer. And Will Golson is there maybe because he's cheap. It's almost a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, the only thing that I would say against that, and I agree, and if they went interior defensive line, even if they traded down to 10 or 13 and drafted a player like Clemson's Christian Wilkins, who I think could be a phenomenal 3 technique in this scheme, I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine if Quentin Williams was the pick or Wilkins. I like Ed Oliver more than the team does. I don't get the impression that this team is enamored with Ed Oliver. Everybody I've talked to says that he's a splashy kind of guy. He's not Aaron Donald. He will flash like Aaron Donald, but he is not Aaron Donald. And he is on the ground more than you think. That he's got some plays where he's neutralized one-on-one too often for the team's liking. And again, it's like you can disagree with that opinion. I do. I think that Oliver is kind of a special player. And I think that even in this scheme where they're going to be playing mostly a 4-man front because they're being nickel, but when they go 3-4 in their base defense, it's still a 3-technique defensive tackle. It's still lining up outside shade of the guard, attacking the B gap, 1-gap penetration scheme. So whether they're 3-4 or 4-3, the 3-technique defensive tackle is not going to change. That's still the job requirements, because you can see what Aaron Donald does in a 3-4 defense as a 3-technique, and he still puts up numbers and makes all sorts of plays. That being said, this is a deep draft for interior defensive linemen. There's a lot of guys that I like. I like Colin Saunders from Western Illinois later in the draft. I think Texas A&M, whether it's Mack or Kingsley, both those guys I think are kind of studly players. So whether you're getting a 3-technique or whether you're getting a 5-technique defensive end, which is like Will Golston's spot, I think you can find those players a little bit deep in the draft. And I think the reason why, in looking back, why we put Devin White in the first mock that kind of surprised everybody right off the bat, because I think we did that January 14th or January 18th, and we said Devin White, and it kind of blew everybody away. Like, well, no, I mean, where's Quan Alexander going to play? Well, we didn't think Quan was going to get re-signed, and he didn't. And you look at the lack of depth at inside linebacker.
Yes.
And it's kind of like if you don't grab one early, you're really not going to get one. I think there's really about 4 or 5 inside linebackers in this entire draft that I like, and there's probably literally about 15 to 20 defensive tackles I really like. It's just that deep at defensive line, and it's that shallow, especially at inside linebacker. So
what you're saying
I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah.
Going defensive line early, it makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, if they traded down a couple spots and grabbed White or grabbed Devin Bush from Michigan, who I'm writing about in tomorrow's SR Fat 5, both of those guys are studs and would just be long-term answers playing next to Levante David.
So, yeah, that's actually exactly what I was getting ready to ask. Scott, I have a question kind of dating back a little bit to last year's draft with Vita Vea. You guys were all over the Vita pick real early, and turned out that was the case. I don't know how much of that was you guys knew it was Vita, or you just knew that they had an interest and it turned out to be him. But looking at this year's draft, who is the Vita Vea for you guys for this year?
I mean, I kind of think Devin White, just because Vita was our first pick for the Bucs in our first and second mock drafts, and then I think we might have mixed it up. We had some Derwin James in there, and we knew it would come down to Derwin James or Vita Vea. Like those were the two guys, and our reporting techniques kind of whittled it down to those two guys, and we're in the process of whittling it down right now. I think that the real wild card this year, though, is it's not down to two guys. I really think that because of the glut of really good defensive players in this year's draft, and the fact that Jason Light has traded down in 2 of the 3 drafts in the first round the last couple of years, that I think you can almost afford to trade down a little bit more this year to maybe even a 15 from Washington if, like, the Redskins were to give up a king's ransom if they wanted to get a quarterback like Daniel Jones or Dwayne Haskins or whatever. If Bruce Allen does something stupid and says, slide down to 15, we'll give up next year's number 1, and we'll give up a 2 and a 4, and we'll take your 5. You do that deal.
Right.
And you slide down 10 spots. Okay, well, let's just skim through some of the names we could still get if you're the Buccaneers, considering that if a quarterback is drafted 1 overall, another one's drafted at 5, you're probably going to have at least 1 or 2 more go before 15, just because it's a quarterback position, right? I mean, you got Daniel Jones, you got Drew Lock that could be there. So you're sliding down, and now your choices are Devin White, Devin Bush at linebacker. You got Montez Sweat. You got Brian Burns. You've got Rashawn Gary. You've got Ed Oliver. You got Christian Wilkins. I mean, there's enough defensive players that you literally can slide down 10 spots in this draft and still come away with a starting caliber stud and a stockpile of draft picks. So that's why this year, if they don't stay at number 5, and if a player like Josh Allen, who's in our latest mock draft, doesn't fall, or Quinnen Williams doesn't fall, and if they have to stick and pick, might be a player like Devin White, might be, they might take a Montez Sweat or someone like that. But gosh, there's so many talented players that can play in the front 7 that they slide down to 10 or 13 or 15, still going to get a damn good player.
I'm with you. Yeah, this is the year to go back, and cause you named them all. Like, I'm not even going to try to add anybody because, like, not every team in front of you is going to take an interior defensive lineman, an edge, or a linebacker. So you're getting one of those guys, and all those guys you'd be more than happy with. Here's sort of the last thing that I haven't heard anybody really talk about, and because it's a big mystery. But if the skies parted and God reached down and touched Kendall Beckwith's ankle and made it like it was his rookie year, does this interior linebacker, the Bush, the White, does all that like just go away? and we start talking about interior defensive line and edge guys?
Yes, I think so. If Kendall Beckwith was completely healthy, I mean, if he was back to where he was as a rookie before that injury, if he miraculously heals and is back to old Kendall Beckwith 100%, then yeah, I do think that totally takes inside linebacker out of the top 3 rounds. And then I think you maybe look at a Ty Summers from TCU, and as a developmental type player. Listen, this Kendall Beckwith injury is really painful for this team because they really liked what he did, and there was some in the building at that time when he was starting in place of Quan, when Quan had those hamstring injuries, and you got Kendall Beckwith out there going against Tom Brady as the rookie Mike linebacker. And remember, Levante David didn't play in that game either, so they almost beat the Patriots with Kendall Beckwith and no Quan and no Levante that night, if my memory serves me correctly. Yeah, because they started Darius Blanton and Beckwith. So, I mean, they liked him as an inside linebacker. There were some that thought he was actually a better true Mike linebacker than Quan. Mm-hmm. And keep in mind, Quan was a 4th-round pick. Jason Light traded up in the 3rd round to get Kendall Beckwith, who was coming off of an ACL tear. That's how much they liked him. Then he comes out, and I want to say he led all rookies in tackles, or was maybe 2nd or 3rd in the league in rookie tackles, and played damn good football as a rookie who was thrust into the action, still coming off of that ACL injury, and he played really well. And so this ankle injury is it's a gut punch to this team, because not only did they draft linebackers in the 4th and 3rd round with Quan and Kendall, now they've lost both of them. And one of them was kind of by choice, because this team was not going to pay $13.5 million to a linebacker that more than likely is going to start the season on PUP.
Right. And
then how good is he going to play in that first year back from an ACL? And then to have Kendall Beckwith as the guy that was kind of not drafted necessarily to be the replacement, but was kind of thought of as, well, looking down the road, if we lose Quan, let's say Quan blows up and has a Pro Bowl caliber season and we just can't sign him, then at least we got Kendall. But now that's not an option. So they're going to have to turn back to the draft, and not even that, but like Plan C, Jack Sitchie for his knee last year. So, I mean, the Buccaneers, when you looked at them in March and you anticipated Beckwith coming back, right? You had Quan in a contract year. You had Levante David, Pro Bowl caliber players right there. You had Beckwith, who you were hopeful to come back from that injury by training camp or preseason, and kind of be the same old Beckwith. And then you draft Jack Sitchie, and you had Darius Taylor, who had come off of a pretty good year as a defender filling in for Levante and Quan, and you felt really, really good about that linebacker position. And then just like that, you end up with really kind of with the exception of Levante, your top 4 linebackers on injured reserve. You have 4 linebackers on injured reserve: Quan Alexander, Jack Sitchie, Kendall Beckwith, who never played, and then Kevin Minter, who they re-signed, or I should say who they signed midseason to replace Quan. He ended up on IR. So you thought that position was loaded, and you ended up with 4 guys on IR at that position.
Yeah.
And that's why Jason Light needs to continue to flood these positions, because you never know what's going to happen.
All right, well, that was Scott Reynolds of PewterReport.com. We'd like to thank him for his time coming on today. And you guys, listen, make sure you go over there. You check out everything that they've got going on at PewterReport.com. Their latest mock is out. You heard Ren referencing it there during our conversation with Scott. You can check out. It sounds like they were playing a little bit of the what-if game.
Yeah, well, it is a what-if game. And a couple of things I brought up, and one, I think I called Isaiah Crowell Cromwell when I was talking to Scott. and he corrected me without actually correcting me.
Uh-huh.
Next time it was his turn to speak, he went, Crowell.
Right.
But
which is good because I always call him Crow.
there you go. But if Scott likes a running back in the second round, or he had him in the third round. He really likes this guy Henderson out of Memphis, and it was something that I criticized when the mock came out. So it was one of the question I sort of wanted to ask him, and he gave a very, very compelling argument about okay, everyone's really high on Peyton Barber, but let's take a step back and look at this, and do you really want to roll in this season with Peyton Barber, Rojo, which is a ginormous question mark,
right?
And the guy that we picked up from Arizona that didn't play football last year.
Right.
So I get it, but I also like how he said, if we do pick up another sort of experienced running back like Crowell, that running back would slide down, sort of in his mocks or in his needs, which I like. But, the one thing we talked about at the end that I like the most is Kendall Beckwith's health really sort of is dictating what the Bucs are gonna do in this draft. Because if he comes back, then he plays next to Levante David,
right?
And Kevin Minter's a backup, and we're all set. And you got Riley Bulla, and you got Jack Sitchy, and we'll see. We're good. We don't need to get a linebacker, because even though it's the two Devons, White and Bush, I know guys that that are these draft pundits that I respect that don't have him even as first round grades.
Right.
And we're talking about taking him at 5. Some guy, came back at me on Twitter he's supposed to be the next Ray Lewis. Some people are saying, and I was just like, well, he's not, and he's not going to be.
Right.
And he's like, how do you know? You have a crystal ball? And I didn't even reply to him. It's like if he thinks he's the next Ray Lewis, okay, I do not think he's the next Ray Lewis. And you heard our conversation about what I think about interior defensive line, because of, if you look next year, Bo Allen's a free agent.
Yep.
Same thing, Gerald McCoy, Nacho's not the answer. Will Golst is not the answer. Will Golst will probably be here because he'll be $3 million or $5 million. I think it goes back up. And for a rotational defensive lineman at that price, it's just a steal nowadays. So I can see he coming back. But you got Vive and you got Golston, and everyone else is I don't know. And you're at 5, and you've got really good interior defensive linemen right there. But, we talked about trading back. I think everybody wants to trade back. Even if we trade back to get, one of those linebackers, I would feel better about it. I really just can't see it at 5. But anyway, it was all in all, it was a really good conversation. It was fun, and unfortunately, he had a hard 20 minutes with us because I wanted to get into some more things about the linebacker position that we'll talk about once we get into sort of these signings that the Buccaneers have made. Yeah,
and Scott's one of those guys you could just have an hours long conversation with him. So. And he'll just go. We've had several of those, I think, Ren, over the course of this last season. Of okay, here's one little question, and they can just spitball on it for 10 minutes. So
I'm chalking it up to how well crafted our questions are.
There you go. Spent a lot of time on that one. We did actually, yeah. So
always do.
Yeah, always do. So, and listen, if you didn't know that Scott was long-winded, go check out any of his SR's Fab 5 that come out every single Friday because those are long. And he puts a lot of time and a lot of effort into those.
He does.
Didn't get to ask him for what a preview is of the one that's coming out today.
He gave us a little bit. He's going to bring up the other linebacker.
He did. Yeah. So you guys make sure you check that out. Coming out, pewterreport.com. It should be out by the time you guys are listening to this, or maybe within a few hours, depending on how early you guys download the show. But it sounds to me just based on our conversation with them, that they are kind of leaning toward Devin White being our guy, which is the one that I keep hearing. It's a name that I keep hearing pop up from a lot of people, of Devin White. So, Ren, I'll put it to you.
Sure.
Okay. This, as we start turning from free agency to the draft, which is kind of really what this episode is. We're closing up that free agency piece, and we'll be making that turn towards the draft. We have said for the last couple of years, and I'm going to stick by it, that figuring out who we're going to draft or trying to pick the right draft is this weird algorithm of positional need for the team and best player available.
Right.
And kind of where those two meet in some weird place, that's going to be who we draft. A lot of people say that linebacker is not our biggest position of need. It is a position of need, but you can find stuff later. You get a lot of those kinds of things. Where are you as far as kind of that algorithm goes right now?
I think interior linebacker is a big position of need. Like, I am not fully on board with Kevin Minter, even though, when he played for us last year before he got hurt, he did fine.
Right.
But let's not forget, he was in the Jets training camp last year and got cut. And who was their head coach? Our defensive coordinator.
Todd Bowles. Right.
Yeah. So right now, as a recording.
He's already been cut by our guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Last year. And I'm pretty sure he played for him in Arizona. So, that's probably why he went to the Jets in the first place.
Right.
So as of right now, he's starting next to Levante David. But you've heard me, if you're a fan of the show and have listened to these pods, you've heard me where I think you can find linebackers anywhere. Unfortunately, this is a terrible class for interior linebackers.
Right.
So I'm with other needs, such as I brought up the interior defensive line, just talked about it again, talked about Scott, just talked about it again. I think that's a huge position of need. Obviously, right guard is a huge position of need. We are a hamstring away from our starting cornerbacks being Carlton Davis, Ryan Smith, and who's the nickel? I always get
Vernon?
Jude. No, Vernon pulled his hammy.
We didn't re-sign Javian, did we?
No. Javian. Yeah, Javian Elliott. Yeah, we did.
We re-signed him? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's our starting three. And Scott talked about it. We need a veteran corner. So when looking at the draft and seeing where the corners break down, where the guards are breaking for the Buccaneers, without moving down, I can't get behind taking a linebacker at 5. I think there's bigger needs, positional need, because the positions are more important. When you if you want to make a chart and rank them, it's like quarterback, then it's the Beto left tackle, edge, whatever, then corners,
right.
And then you can start to say maybe interior offensive line. Oh, probably wide receiver. You need one stud wide receiver. And then, then it starts to get all jumbled up. But what's not like in the top 5, 6, 7? Linebacker. Like interior linebacker. Like it's just not there. So when you throw that into the equation, it's just, and I understand, but I would rather just roll with Minter and Levante David and pick up guys if we need them, if people go down with injury.
For the trenches.
Then blow that pick. I don't say blow that pick. That's not fair. But use that pick on one of the Devons, White or Bush at 5.
Well, we'll get to that, and I want to dive a little bit more into your idea that interior defensive line is such a big position of need, because I'm not sure that it is, but we're going to get there. But why don't we kind of go through what we've been doing so far? We'll go through the positions, kind of like we did in our last episode where we went through, and we won't do a full depth chart this time. But we'll go through, we'll look and see what we've added, and we'll talk about those. So certainly that defensive line spot will come up. So with that, Ren, let's go ahead. We'll just start right off at the top where we should always start, which is the quarterback position. What we had said back then was, obviously we're all set on our starting guy. It's really just a matter of the backup. And turns out that backup is Ryan Griffin, that you and I both said that we thought should return. He returns on a 2-year deal, though, which I find very interesting. There's no secret at this point. The vast majority of these signings are a lot of 1-year deals.
Right.
And okay, why don't we dive into that? Just kind of an overall picture real quick, Ren. Why so many 1-year deals?
It's very complicated.
It's all about the comp pick next year, right? Like for two years away, right? It's all about the comp pick, right?
It's part of it. It really is. But mostly it's about the salary cap that they have. It's a salary cap issue. Of all these players that Jason Light has signed, and he's signed a bunch, and we haven't had a lot of money, and he's done a really good job getting these guys in here.
Right.
It's it's not 1 year prove it deal for the Bucs, but it is 1 year prove it deal for these guys for the rest of the NFL.
Right.
This isn't like, hey, do good and we'll sign you a long-term contract. That's not it. It's like there's a lot of bridge players. Some of these guys aren't going to start, and some of them are going to contribute a lot. Like I think the two biggest, or I guess the three biggest, is going to be Perryman, Buchanan, and Barrett, the guy we got from Denver. And those and everyone else is just filling out the roster before the draft.
Yeah.
So But as far as only 1 year deal, and if they get drafted away, like if they get signed next year, not with the Bucs, it helps them. Like we see it this year. Like Fitzpatrick has signed, has helped. Josh Shaw has signed somewhere and helped. Darius Taylor has signed somewhere else. Like these things help the overall view. And now that the Bucs have a solid enough roster where they don't have to hang on to everybody and try to bring in these mercenaries, that Jason Light can start to work the compensation pick game, and it goes into it. But mostly, I would say like 70% of it is because just the way the cap is right now.
Right. Because like if you look at it, and I mean, it seems like so many people have been focused on the comp pick this year. The comp pick. Oh, well, the Patriots always get comp picks and this and that, and somebody writes an article and everybody jumps on it, and I understand how that works. And a lot of us are kind of like, really, why don't we get these comp picks? Let's get these comp picks. And looking at it right now, as we record this on the comp pick chart, we should be due a third-round comp pick next year if we don't do any more signings.
Right.
Just as it is right now, and that will be for Quan Alexander.
Right.
His has not been canceled out. So we'll see. This could change by the time we release this episode.
Yeah, exactly.
It just could. And obviously,
the Bucs sign one more guy, sign that veteran corner or that running back we've just been talking about, and it's back to zero.
Right. Unless Brent Grimes signs somewhere else, and then we're back up one. So
I'm hoping Adams gets picked up somewhere.
You're right. Yeah, he'd be somebody that would qualify. So, it's an interesting thing. But what I wonder is, and I think what fans are trying to figure out is, do all these 1 year signings looking towards a comp pick, looking towards this idea of, hey, we're going to fill holes on the roster till we get to the draft. Does this represent a shift, maybe under new Bruce Arians, a shift in offseason strategy for the Buccaneers?
Well, yeah, because they had to. I mean, it's...
No, I'm not saying because they're forced to because of salary cap. I'm talking, is this an intentional shift, like even maybe just philosophically? Like, yes, their hand is forced because they don't have money, but is there also more to play than just they're being slave to the salary cap?
I'm going to go back 30%. Really to be able to answer that and to see how Jason Light handles this, this new coaching staff, and be able to coach up the players and make C players, B players, and B players, A players, and be able to keep his own guys and all the things that he wants to do. We're going to have to wait till the Bucs, are somewhere in the middle, like actually have some money to throw at a guy or two. So, gut feeling, I'm going to say yes, because I just, I've seen things where the Bucs are, and I don't know, I really didn't want to talk about this, but the Bucs have something like $80 million next year or something, like it's projected cap for next year. But there's so many things are going to change. Like you got to sign Jameis Winston, maybe Ali Marpet. I don't know, something bad happened. He can't play football anymore.
Sure.
Now you got to sign a guard, and he's got dead cap room or dead cap money. So I just, is it a philosophical change? I don't know. Yeah. I still think, like I just said, it's like 70% of it is because they're a slave to the cap, like you said, and that's what I'm going with.
Right. So for this, so why don't we go ahead and dive through this? But I do want to put this out there, just a thing to keep in the back of our mind. As far as I can tell, and what I can look at and see here, we are currently we need to clear about $5.7 million just to clear our rookie pool with where we are right now. So there are some cuts that are going to have to come. I'm not even going to entertain the idea of restructures. I don't think they're going to try to do a whole lot of those, and if they do, it'll be minimal. And that doesn't even give us that extra couple of million, Ren, that you always talk about that you want to just sort of have in reserve for midseason signings. So, so there are certainly still some more changes that need to happen. But why don't we go ahead and run through this? Quarterback position, RG4 signs to a 2-year deal to be our backup here for the next 2 years. So I think this is what we're going to see rolling into the season. It's Jamison and Ryan Griffin. The question, I think, then becomes at this position, are we going to hold that third position, that third roster spot for a quarterback this year?
Yep, we've already talked too much about it.
Yeah. Let's move on to the position right behind then.
Sure.
Peyton Barber. We talked about this quite a bit with Scott,
Right.
signing him to that 1-year deal. To me, it looks like the running back position is pretty much done, is pretty much complete. Scott seems to think otherwise.
Scott wants to draft a guy or bring in a vet. I sort of have been on the train of, no, we're good with, the 3 guys, and then, we still have Sean Wilson and Uguablare from I don't remember his name.
Dare Ogunbowale.
There you go. He's another power back. He's kind of like almost a clone of Peyton Barber,
right?
As far as running style and stuff. And I was kind of like, well, let's just roll with that, But after seeing, Bucs fan after Bucs fan and draft pundit after draft pundit and, and credentialed media to the Buccaneers after credentialed media to the Buccaneers keep talking about the running back position, I'm starting to cave. But it's like it's 7th round for me,
Right.
Like there's guys out there that, I like this kid out of Miami. Can't remember his name right now. I think it's Homer maybe. They're just everywhere. So, I still don't think the Bucs are going to draft a running back. But I don't want them to put it this way. I don't want them to draft a running back, but I can see if they draft a running back somewhere in round, 2, 3, or 4. I get it, but once again, with the other holes to fill, I just don't want it. With just grab a undrafted free agent, or more ideally, pick up one of these veteran backs that are proven you kind of know what they can do.
Sure. My estimation, honestly, and what I am personally comfortable with at this point is I am good with sticking with what we have for right now for this season. I don't know that it's necessarily the long-term solution. One of those little caveats you always put into everything is you can't fix everything in one off season. And I feel like we are set enough at the running back position that we can address this situation next year. Like, I'm okay for this year. Let's address it next year when we've got some other stuff to figure out. Yeah,
and in my heart of hearts, I'm with you. That's kind of it. And once it's because, you can find running backs anywhere because you can. And it's if you have, like Scott said, okay, you have to reset and start over. It doesn't. It's the easiest position to start over with, except maybe wide receiver,
long snapper,
snapper. You'll be able to, if everybody that is on the roster week 1 with the Buccaneers is no longer on the roster, come draft time. You'll be able to find. There's guys. You'll be able to find them.
Yeah.
You will.
Yeah.
And so I'm with you. Let's just roll with what we got.
Yeah, that's what I would honestly. If we signed this Croa guy or something like that,
that's Cromwell.
I would just be surprised. I really would. And if they did, then okay, fine, whatever. I honestly don't care. Just let's move on with it. I don't want to eat up more money. I just said we're $5.7 million we need to clear $5.7 million just to get our draft picks paid.
Which was my problem with, let's move on to wide receiver, which was my problem with Perryman.
Sure, right, and that's so we signed Rashad Perryman, picked him up after the Odell Beckham Jr. thing went down with the Browns. Now, I did text a few friends of mine that are Browns fans just to see what their thought was on Rashad Perryman, and I think he came out of like Oakland or San Francisco or something before he went to the Browns.
The Ravens.
The Ravens, one of those R's, and they said like when he was with the Ravens, he was real bad at the drops.
He's got a reputation of stone hands.
Right. However, when he was with the Browns, he didn't drop anything. Like his year with the Browns, he was fine. Didn't drop anything. So, but
plus he's also been injured a lot.
Right. Oh, has he?
Yeah, he was injured for I think 2 out of the 3 years with Baltimore, and then didn't make it back from injury from the Browns, so somewhere like halfway through the season or around there.
Right.
Yeah, but it's one of those guys, he's fast, everybody.
Right.
So, you run a 4.3, like you sort of see this. These guys that are pure speed guys, like they get hurt a lot and they get hamstring injuries, like John Ross, even Deshaun Jackson. I mean, he didn't pull a hammy, but that was sort of his. He
was out for a couple of games. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was more of a thumb and a hand. But with Philadelphia and with Washington, a lot of Bucs fans were like, "Hey, we'll get Deshaun Jackson." We're like, "No, he's going to miss 6 games a year because of his hamstring. Like, let's find somebody else." It ended up not being the case here, but he got nicked up a bit. So, and when you take his salary, which was was it 4 or 5? 4. So at the time, we hadn't restructured Bo Allen. We hadn't let go of Brian Anger. I think we had $12 million, and we spent 4 on a guy who gets injured a lot.
A quarter of it, yeah.
Yeah, and I know I've talked about it, and now he's on the team, and now he's the 4th best receiving option at best, maybe the 5th. Because you factored O.J. Howard, Cam Brate, you got Mike Evans,
and
of course.
To clarify for our listeners out there, you're talking about receiving options. You're not talking about wide receiver, the position. You're talking about overall receiving options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, why are you spending 1/3 of the space that you have on a guy who drops the ball, gets injured a lot, but runs fast? I mean, you drafted Justin Watson for a reason. If you put Justin Watson and Perryman in a simulcast, the 40-yard dash at the combine, by the time they get to the 40-yard line, okay, Perryman may have a 2-3 yard lead on Watson. You know what that is? That's 1 step. And that's 40 yards down the field. I mean, I didn't get it. I get it now. Bruce Arians wants speed. He's got speed. At the time, I was afraid that they weren't going to be able to sign these other guys that we needed, like interior linebacker and and cornerback and guard, and but somehow they, Jason Light has worked it out. But like you said, not really. They're in the negative right now.
Yeah.
So I'm not as upset as it was. It's basically because we haven't had to release anybody because of it.
Right.
It's like, hey, we really need an inside linebacker, but we don't have the money for it because we just spent, $4 million on Perryman. So we're going to have to let go Will Golston and try to replace him somewhere else with with Nacho. So we'll have 2 Nachos on the team. That's where it sort of, burnt my britches. But as of right now, it looks like everything's worked out. And but like you said, cuts are coming. So maybe I will flip-flop again.
And speaking of SR's Fab Five, the number 1 title that he had out of his Fab Five from last week was talking about now with Perryman, in the roster, this is going to move Chris Godwin to the slot. How do you for
I
2
think
years?
They're all going to play
2 years,
slot.
do you? Because for 2 years we've been talking about Godwin being the next outside guy. He's going to be the number 2 outside guy. He's been training as that outside guy. That's where they've really had him. Obviously, with Humphreys now gone, that's where they're moving him in. But you think that everybody's going to move into the slot, kind of Larry Fitzgerald type of thing that we saw out in Arizona.
I think you'll see Mike Evans in the slot. I think you'll see Godwin. I think you'll see Perriman. I think you'll see O.J. Howard. And of course, Watson. You're going to see 5 guys who'll be able to play that slot position. So it's something to talk about. So I'm not poo-pooing Chris Godwin going to slot, because he is, and he might end up playing most of his snaps there. Mm-hmm. He might, but it's going to be something like 55 to 45. It's not going to be 80 to 20.
Right.
So, if once again, it's just a 1 year. And if you're hell bent, damn it, I want Godwin to have his chance, it's only a 1 year deal with Perriman.
Right. Here's the other deal with Perriman, and to kind of go back to that comp pick thing we were talking about, his $4 million does put him into it gets us a higher comp pick next year when he goes away. If he goes away. If they don't re-sign him.
It matters what he signs for.
It does, but it does give us a little bit, right? But
I don't want to talk about comp picks anymore.
Fair enough. No, but that's the only positive thing, because honestly, I don't get this signing. I really don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand the rationale. I still just don't get it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
you drafted Watson.
Yeah, I just don't get it.
That's why you drafted him.
Yes, exactly.
Hump's gone. Yes,
right.
He's right here.
I don't care if
Deshaun
you have a new
Jackson's
coach.
Gone. Yes, his name's Chris Godwin. Okay, now what?
Exactly. All right. So moving on. One of the major positions of need that we said that we needed to sign was right guard. That was one that sort of hung out there until relatively recently. Mm-hmm. When the Buccaneers signed Earl Watford to a 1-year deal. And Ren, I would still say right guard is a huge position of need.
Yes. When I was excited, it's they got their right guard. You start reading about him, and it's this is 5th team in 2 years, and it's just somebody they know.
Yeah.
It's the Jaquiz Rogers of the offensive line for Bruce Arians and the Cardinals coaching staff. I do not want this guy to be starting at right guard.
Yeah.
But we'll see what Kappa, if it stays this way until the draft, which it might, the sweet spot for the Buccaneers is taking an interior offensive lineman in the second round. That's the perfect sweet spot. All the good ones are still there. It's a position of need. And I think that's kind of where they're rolling. Doesn't matter how many mock drafts you do, you're going to have your choice of 4 guys at the top of the second. And if you don't, there's another 3 at the top of the third that, can come in and play. And some very versatile guys.
Right.
Edwards out of Wisconsin is one guy that can play all 3 and can play all 3 positions, and it did in Wisconsin.
Yeah. So effectively what we're saying is this guy is not the answer at this position. And if this means anything and gives you any clue as to how the Buccaneers are valuing this guy, he is making pretty much the exact same thing as Alex Kappa this year. And he's in on a 1-year deal. So, this is not the big splash free agent signing
at this
position.
This is not the starter.
No, not at all. And we'll see what he can do in camp. But, definitely mark this down. This is one of those. We're still looking for this guy, and it's probably going to come through the draft, to be quite frank, unless they think Alex Kappa is going to turn into this guy somehow all of a sudden this year. I wouldn't bet on that, though. All right. Moving on off of the offense, because that really is all the offensive signings. Let's do the special teams real quick because those are easy. Kicker, Cairo Santos is coming back. And it's hard to talk about him without going ahead and pairing him with the punter that we signed, Bradley Pinion. Now, Santos signs a 1-year deal, but Bradley Pinion signs a 4-year deal. This is the one free agent signing that we've done this entire year that is truly a multiple-year deal. That they brought this guy in to be the guy.
Yeah.
He is it. Bringing him in. So, but the word on the street is this guy can also handle the kickoff duties. So Cairo will just focus on field goals. Pinion will be the kickoff guy and the punter.
Yes.
And there we are.
So, and it's not really a huge money save as I thought when, first, hey, we signed Pinion and we released Anger. Okay, great. Because Anger was making like $3 million. This guy is going to save us like Jesus. He might save us $1.5 million. Okay, good. He's making like $2.5 million. So he's only saving like $5, $500,000, $750,000. But like you said, he's the guy for the future. The two things that he's known for is dropping the ball inside the 20, hooray, and kicking the ball through the end zone, also hooray.
Right.
So when they signed him and I started looking into him, I go, okay, what this tells me is that the Buccaneers can go and just find a kicker who's really accurate. Like, you don't need this huge leg guy. Like, you don't need to bring in Catanzaro. Like, hey, man, I can make a 63-yarder if you need me to. Well, that's great. You know what I really need you to make?
A 40-yarder.
And the extra point. Like, that's what and that's what Santo can do. I know Scott Reynolds, who, of course, we just had on, is talking about bringing in another veteran to compete. Maybe not. But I still think it's going to be the accurate guy. I think the guy who wins the job is going to be somewhere in the 90 percentile from like 45 yards in,
right?
Or 49 in. And then if it's like 50 plus, he's like 50%, which would drop him down to sort of like 80%. But that's not really what they're worried about. They just want a guy to just make the ones you're supposed to make, man.
Right.
And we don't need the big leg guy because we got the punter who's going to put it in the third row.
So
on the kickoffs.
For whatever it's worth, the team does currently have two other kickers, another place kicker and a punter on the team. Philip Anderson is this kicker. I think he's the guy we got out of Germany. And punter Hayden Hunt. Both of them are about $500,000 right now. So, we get rid of both of those guys. There's $1 million. Which I feel bad. We're throwing around a number like $1 million like it's nothing, but, at this point, every little bit helps with this salary cap. So, the biggest thing, like I say, that I really get out of this is the idea that they really brought Pinion in. Like, this is their free agent signing.
That's their big splash,
This
everybody.
is the big guy, yeah. Like, now here's the question, Ren. You may or may not know actually the answer to this. He came from the 49ers, right? Why did he get away from them? Was this just he came up as a free agent this year and they didn't make him a good enough offer, or like?
Yeah, well, the fans were sad to see him go. I don't know how much interest the Niners really had in him, but I think they invested a 5th-round pick a couple of years ago, like 4 years ago in him. So it's not, this guy was coveted coming out of college, like, and he's produced. So I really don't know. And yeah, they had like a mini presser with him. And I think the first question was like, why Tampa? And he was like, why not? And that's about as far as it's gotten. Like why he left San Francisco.
Right.
So, and honestly, I don't care. Like if you drop it inside 20 and you put it through the back of the end zone, we're
good.
We're good. Yeah,
we're good. Thank you. All right. So why don't we jump over to defense now, Ren? And we're gonna trail back to that interior defensive line spot. And here's kind of the pushback I want to give you on this and let you answer. I know. Now, just for the record, Unrein is gone, which we all speculated was going to happen. We did re-sign Nacho.
Yes.
Nacho Nunez Roches or whatever, and I forget how to say his name, but he's back on a 1-year deal. Bo Allen, they restructured his deal. He was supposed to be due $5 million, and that's if he stuck around and whatever. And they basically said, okay, we'll tear up that contract. We'll guarantee you $4 million for 1 year. And I think the 1 year was like his side of it. Like, I'll take a pay cut, and they guarantee the money. Like, he'll be on the roster. He will be on the roster this year, regardless of how you felt about him last year, Bucs fans. Bo Allen's going to be on this roster this year. He's back for $4 million. He's an undrafted or an unrestricted free agent going up next year, so who knows what he'll do then. But he is back. So that leaves us with our interior defensive linemen. Currently, right now, Gerald McCoy, Vita Vea, and Bo Allen, plus a couple of other depth guys.
Nacho and
Ledbetter. Jeremiah Ledbetter.
Yeah, that doesn't count. But you're forgetting Will Golston, too.
And we do have Will Golston, but he is technically listed as a defensive end, although he does slide in. Stevie Tuigovalatu still actually on the roster as well. I don't anticipate seeing much come to that, but he is still technically there as well. But with those three guys, Gerald McCoy, Vita Vea, and Bo Allen, they came in and re-signed Bo Allen to be here this year. Like he's coming in. So is this a... I know next year, we're going to come up with the same thing with Gerald McCoy again next year.
Right.
Right? But does it make interior defensive line as big of a need this year? Kind of that running back thing that we had. Like, are we okay for this year and we can press this need to next year? Or is this still this big of a need? Because we just signed Vita Vea last year. We just used our number 1 pick on him last year. Is this still the position of need that we have?
Yes. Because Bo Allen's not going to be here next year.
Uh-huh.
He's a free agent.
Right.
Gerald McCoy, we'll see. He might be like we're gonna have the same exact question. Hey, you're making a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Your stats are
right, but that's all next year though.
I know that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm doing it. All right. Bo Allen gone. Mm-hmm. McCoy, same thing. Like Nacho. Hope he's not like needing an improvement. Ledbetter. Blah. Will Golston. Blah. I mean, so now you're talking. You got 2 guys you feel good about, and one of them might not be here because of a salary cap casualty. You're at 5. You can get an elite interior defensive lineman. Now, we just heard from Scott Reynolds. There's a lot of interior defensive linemen. There are, but they're not Quentin Williams, and they're not Ed Oliver, and they're not Wilkins, like out of Clemson. They're not those guys. They're not. So you got to get younger there, I know a lot of people are talking edge, but we just signed Barrett, I believe.
Shaquille Barrett.
Yeah, we just signed Barrett.
Dan Buchanan.
I know that Noah Spence is a huge question mark, but this is his position. A stand-up rushing linebacker. Like that's him. This is where he should have been. He never should have been drafted to a 4-3 team. Like, let's face it. This is like, so we got those 2 edge rushers. Jason Pierre-Paul is going to stand up sometimes. He's an edge. You got Carl Nass. Like, you got 4 really sort of solid edge guys,
right?
That, you can count on. And the interior line, you got McCoy, Allen, and Vea, and you got nobody behind them. And 2 of those guys are not going to be here. And I would almost guarantee Bo Allen won't be here next year at this point.
So, I would guarantee you that too.
Yeah. So best player available, meet position of need.
And you're sticking with interior defensive line.
Yeah, pick 5, man.
I get your argument there. I really do. I understand the logic. I still feel like as far as that algorithm goes, I think we might be a little bit more okay with this position for right now. And kind of in that running back situation, like we could.
Well, who's your spot then? Who's your algorithm meets position of need at 5?
I don't know. I really don't, because you know how much I am with getting all this, and I mean we were talking a little bit before the show. Like I'm just now in that spot where I'm starting to see those same names continue to percolate, and I'm kind of looking at those different pieces. But I mean, right now, to me, the linebacker position certainly is a big need. I don't know if there's any. Okay, let me ask you this. You might know this. Offensive guard, that guard position. Right. We talk about oftentimes with the left tackle. Like, if you're going to get a left tackle who's going to be around for a long time, you really got to take one early. Right? I don't know that guard is necessarily that same. No. You don't take a guard at 5. Right?
No, not unless it's who was last year? Quentin Nelson.
Right.
Yeah, unless
we
it's
don't
just
have
guy
a Quentin Nelson in this year's draft.
Yeah,
right?
like he's already got like stories people talk about him. He made the Pro Bowl. I don't know if he was an All-Pro or not, but yeah, it's like he was everything as advertised. Like you plug him in and you let him play for 5 years. You pay him a bunch of money, and then you call him. It's like, oh, it's Joe Thomas, like of the guards. Like he's like.
We don't have that in this year's draft, though, right?
That is correct.
So, because that would be a position that I would be looking at actually right now. So,
But like I said earlier, like all the good guards are going to be there for you at the top of the second.
Right.
They're going to be there for you.
Yeah, and and here's the other thing: I still personally am not super confident in our cornerback position. And now I know that we've spent a lot of draft picks there over the last couple of years, and I mean a lot of draft picks.
I understand that,
but I personally feel fairly shaky at that. So I'm in this spot as sort of a casual draft analyst guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Just looking at my teams thinking, okay, the big positions in need are a guard, which is not going to be our top 5 pick. I would a linebacker, a cornerback, and a defensive tackle. Right now, those 4 positions are kind of all in the same category for me. So to say that it's defensive tackle or interior defensive line over everybody else, I'm not. That's what I mean when I say I feel like it might be okay if we have to push it off and it was one of these other guys. I'm not going to sit there and say, if this team drafts such and such a position, I'm turning in all my credentials. I'm not doing that. Like, I'm okay. With wherever it goes.
You got credentials?
Shh.
What do you mean, shush?
It's a hypothetical situation here. You understand what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, here's the thing. Once again, when we talk about the draft, best player meets, position of need.
Right.
Also at 5, it's not corner. Like, there's a huge debate about who's the best corner in this draft. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's normally 2. It's like Byron Murphy or Greedy Williams. None of these guys are worth the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
If you took last year's and the year before that cornerback class, like the top corner in this class, maybe makes it into the top 5.
Okay.
So corner could be a spot at the top of the second round. A trade back from 5, corner comes into play for me, or top of the third. Or top of the second. Like, you could go cornerback because there are some good ones that I like. There's a kid out of Michigan State I like. There's a kid out of Houston I like. Isaiah Johnson. The other one's Justin Lane, I think. I don't think Greedy Williams. I don't think DeAndre Baker from Georgia, and I don't think Byron Murphy from Washington are going to make it out of the first. It's just too big of a position of need. Okay, so you have those couple of guys that I talked about at the top of the second. If they're there, I wouldn't mind taking them because, once again, like I said earlier, there are very nice guards at the top of the third you can take. But after that, as far as like thinking about making him a starter, like round 4, they're just not there. So, I mean, we know that Jason Light is going to take – it doesn't really matter to the position. We've seen it year after year now. Like, did we need O.J. Howard? No. He was just like – it was like one of the guys we weren't going to move for. He was there. He was there. So it could be – like that's why I just keep taking linebacker off the board because – unless the Bucs just fall in love with the guy and they think that that Devin White is the guy,
right?
And
that's what I keep saying. Like I look at these, all, and I'll put this out to anybody out there who's listening to this. I kind of see all of these positions in that algorithm on a fairly equal level, and I keep hearing various people elevate this one position or this one player over everybody else, and I don't see that elevation. Like, it's...
You think interior linebacker is as important as cornerback?
As far as a position of need?
No. If everything's equal, would you rather have the best cornerback in the draft or the best linebacker in the draft? If they were graded equally.
And the Bucs needed both? Because I'm saying this in light of our current roster.
Yes. The Bucs need both.
Okay. The Bucs need both.
Let me put it to you this way.
Yeah.
All right. We got guard, we got interior linebacker, we got cornerback, we got edge. Wait, you didn't have edge in there, did you? You had guard, interior linebacker, cornerback, and what? Didn't you have another one?
Interior lineman.
Oh, yeah. I said that. Guard, corner, interior linebacker,
and then interior lineman, defensive lineman, and
then interior defensive lineman.
Yeah.
Okay, say that there's 4 players there for you to take. All right, and they're all graded at 90.
Okay.
All the positions of need are equal. Okay, you need these guys.
Yeah.
But which one's more important? Like a quarterback or the long snapper? Which one's more important? Quarterback, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so let's rank them. You got corner, guard, interior defensive lineman, and linebacker.
Bucs fans, I want to hear from you on this. How would you rank those 4 positions? We'll probably put this out as a poll, but since you were talking about it right now, gosh, that's hard. Oh, that's really hard.
No, it's not.
I'm a trenches guy.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with the trenches first.
Okay.
Right. And I'll put if they're all 4 the same, everything else that graded out equally. Yeah, I'd probably say defensive line.
Okay.
It's a big position of need.
Right.
I feel like I'm going to get slammed for this, but I'm
going to wait till you're done.
Yeah, I'll stay with the trenches with the guard position.
Okay.
But and then between linebacker and cornerback, and this might just be from recent experience that we've had here with the Buccaneers, but I'm going to say cornerback.
Yeah.
Over linebacker.
So now linebacker's 4th, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think cornerback should be 1 and then just slide everyone down. Okay. But that's here nor there.
Okay.
According to your rankings, interior defensive line.
Right.
What I've been saying, the algorithm there, it matches.
Right.
Next one, guard. Algorithm doesn't matches. They're all in the top of the second.
Mm-hmm.
Third one, cornerback. Doesn't match. The ones that are just as good, arguably, as the guys that are going to go in the first, some of them will be there in the second. And the last one, linebacker, which you're going to put the number 5 pick for a guy who is he's not for me, he's just not. He's the best there is this year. That's it.
Okay.
You
Fair
know,
enough.
he's
Fair
just
enough.
the best there is this year.
So, but the other half of that algorithm, though, Ren goes, is, and let's say it's Devin White, because that's the name that everybody keeps throwing out there.
Right.
So you have the algorithm of position and need meets best player available. Is Devin White that much better of a player to throw that algorithm upside down over an Ed Oliver, Quinnen Williams?
And see, this is where it gets tricky, because you heard Scott say there's only like 3 linebackers he likes.
Right.
And 2 of them are the Devons. I don't know if he likes Mac Wilson out of Alabama. There's a guy, Drew Tranquill, out of Notre Dame, that I like, but he kind of plays more outside. I mean, there's some guys that he probably likes in that spot. But when there's only really 2 guys,
right?
And they're not going to be there at the second, and you need one, that's where it starts to get weird.
Right.
But the way you unweird that is you trade down.
Which, by the way, I have said since day one, the Buccaneers are not picking at number 5, and I still stand by that.
It depends who falls.
It does. But I just, looking into my crystal ball, however it's going to work, I just think that that's the way it's going to wind up. So, Buck fans, I want to put that out to you. And Ren, this is why we have this conversation, because so many people get tied to a particular player, or they get tied to a particular position of need. And it's really this thing of both. And, as you just said, these things, if everything else is equal, yeah, we may have it in this order, but not everything is equal. So there, it could, throw everything upside down. All right, why don't we go through and finish this up? We, speaking of linebacker, let's talk about our linebacker position. This was a position we said that Jason Light needed to do a lot of work in this offseason. So with that, he signed Devontae Bond. We knew about that one a long time ago. But he also signed Kevin Minter to a 1-year deal. Devontae Bond I bring back is a 1-year deal. They signed Shaquille Barrett to a 1-year deal. And they signed Dayon Buchanan to a 1-year deal. That's a whole lot of 1-year deals. Not a lot of long-term fixing at this position.
Right. we already talked about it. Minter got cut by our defense coordinator camp.
Yep.
Bond has done a whole lot of nothing.
Yep.
He's been injured too, but when he gets in there, he doesn't. He's not necessarily a liability, but it's really close.
Unless you're on punt coverage.
Yes, a special teamer.
I
you need him.
still hold him on that.
but I think Bond's going to play sort of backup Barrett. I think he's going to be an edge rusher.
Right.
If you heard me talk about many times, he has more sacks in junior college and games played. Doing what? Standing up on the edge. So I think that's where he's going to fit in. Now, Buchanan is really interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked a little bit about this off air after we talked to Scott Reynolds. If you've been around football long enough, you remember about a decade ago, they always had this conversation about, that guy's a tweener.
Mm-hmm.
He's a tweener. You know what tweeners are now? They're edge rushers, and they're the second or third most important position on the football field now. Now, I think the new tweener is this money joker guy who can cover like a safety and tackle like a linebacker, be able to plug holes and run fits and set the edge. This is what I know I call him Dion, but it's Dayon, right? Dayon.
Yeah, the pronunciation guide says Dayon.
Dayon Buchanan. Now, the good thing for the Buccaneers, if you're looking for a quote-unquote linebacker, these guys, these sort of big safety, small linebacker, money joker backers, there's a lot of them in the last half of the round because they're not valued yet right now.
Mm-hmm.
I really think the NFL, you want to call it three safety, running three safeties. You want to call it nickel linebacker, nickel safety, whatever you want to call it. This is the next evolution. Are these guys going to be able to cover these ginormous tight ends, which are really just big wide receivers because they're almost just as fast, or cover running backs out of the backfield? This money backer is going to be a very important piece. It's going to climb sort of we just did position rankings. Mm-hmm. This it's going to climb in the next coming years about how important this guy is. So I like it. It gives a lot of flexibility, a lot of creativity, what Todd Bowles can do with supplementing other linebackers or even taking, since we're short at middle linebacker, you can take Minter off in nickel, leave Levante David in there and bring in Buchanan, and you're actually better, and if he doesn't, it depends on how far off that gap is as far as stopping the run for that money backer position. And Dayon Buchanan has shown he's made his career effort. He's a former, first round pick. I think he's a former first round pick. And Mark Barron has sort of been the poster boy, like the pioneer of this. He's made a career out of it. We drafted him, was a safety. He's not really a safety. So he goes to the Rams and they make him this hybrid money backer thing, and he just got signed to another deal. He's a free agent and he's still in the league. So it's with the signing of Buchanan, the interior linebacker situation need drops even further because they're only going to be on the field about 30% of the time. And then add on to that, cross your fingers, Buck fans, that Kendall Beckwith can come back. And if he comes back and moves Minter to his backup, then this linebacker at 5, and there's only 3 of them out there, and we need it just take those guys off the board at all. And if you are going to go linebacker, look like 5th, 6th, 7th round and look for this guy that's going to sort of be this hybrid safety type of guy.
So with the linebacker position, this is not a position we're done with yet. Despite 4 signings, all of them 1-year deals. So let's say we go your route and we do interior defensive line in round 1.
Right.
When are we getting the linebacker? Is the linebacker on the books for the draft this year? For you?
No, I actually tweeted that out. I'm like, I've after doing draft after draft after draft, and I'll do a draft and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a linebacker this time. in round 1. And then I'll do another one. Okay, I'm going to take a linebacker round 2. I'm going to take a linebacker. And I'll do, 3 or 4. I won't go all the way to 7. And then I'll do it again. Because it changes each time about who's kind of there.
Sure.
And you get an idea about, roughly who's going to be there. And for the price you have to pay in draft capital, either first or second round, to get anybody who can even see the field as a starting inside 3-4 linebacker, it's just not worth it. It's so you roll with Kevin Minter, and I know it's scary because you're a pulled hamstring away from Riley Bulla and Jack Sitchy lining up next to Levante David. I get it. Sitchy's still a question mark. Who knows? May surprise us. That would really have been great if he didn't blow out his ACL the same game Quan did.
Right.
We got some little bit to see what Sitchy could do, but. But yeah, it's like you roll with what you got, and Bond can slide over and play, on rundowns in a base 3-4, and that's where I am on it. Like that's where I am. I'm like, if I was a GM, I'm not taking.
You'd be done with linebacker at this point.
As far as free agency, yeah, and the only thing I'm drafting is a money joker backer in the late rounds because no one values them yet, and they'll be there.
Okay, fair enough.
They're too slow for safety, but they're too small to play linebacker.
Yeah, and by the way, you mentioned you've done a lot of these mocks, and I know you have. One of our most popular YouTube episodes that we've had this entire offseason, Ren, is the one where you did the mock draft.
Oh, really?
So you guys can go to our YouTube channel, and you can go back a couple of ones and do that. Ren, it actually occurs to me, so here's live on-air broadcast programming, Ren. We should probably do one together, kind of go through one and use my idiocracy as we go through that to explain.
It has electrolytes.
All right. Let's wrap this up. Let's wrap this whole conversation up. Cornerback, what I say is one of our top positional needs. And the cornerback, the only thing we really did there was bring back Devontae Harris, who we did not tender, and we just brought him back on a lower offer for a 1-year deal. And other than that, we're pretty much right where we have been.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, it is.
I would feel so much better if they would just bring it up. Like, you know what I need? I need one more interior linebacker signed. I need one more veteran cornerback signed. I need one more starting guard signed. And I will be happy clam. But we don't got the money for it.
Right.
So
how much money do you need for that? Is that $10 million?
I don't know.
$15 million?
I don't know. I think the double digit signings are done.
Yeah. Oh, they absolutely are.
So we'll see. Maybe they get creative and sign a corner and pay him 1.1 and guarantee that, and then his second year he gets paid $7 million guaranteed.
And for the record, where I was talking about the salary cap, I said we're actually 5.7 under or over the cap right now.
Yeah.
That includes all current contracts. So that is everybody going into camp and all of that. If you just take your top 51 contracts,
right,
which is effectively that's your roster, we're actually $3.2 million to the good right now.
Right.
So we
including the rookie. That means you can sign all your rookies. You still got $3 million left.
Yeah, and that's kind of no. I don't know, Brent. I don't know that includes the rookie pool.
What are you looking on, Spotrac?
Yeah, Spotrac. I'm not sure.
That includes the rookie. Spotrac and over the cap automatically includes the rookie pool in there, estimated rookie pool.
Okay.
It does. Okay. I've had this conversation.
Sure. Well, either way, currently right now we're at 3.2 to the good. So we've got a little bit there, but as you would say, even that $3 million, that's that pad that you have to keep in reserve to go into the season with. For midseason signings, for injuries and all that kind of stuff. So, all right, final position. Safety. As recently as this week, Ren, we signed Kendall Bryce to a 1-year deal to come back in at safety. I honestly don't necessarily know that I fully understand this particular signing. Unless they're planning on replacing somebody. That was a position, we had the 4.
Yeah.
I know you always want depth. I know we're going into camp. I know you have all these things, but still – I don't necessarily understand this signing. Drop some knowledge on us.
I don't either, and except what it tells me is they're absolutely not drafting a safety, and they're gonna bring in 6 safeties and let them fight it out for the 4 spots.
Mm-hmm.
And now if you count Buchanan as a safety, which you could, if you wanted to. I know he's a linebacker in the depth chart.
And you also got to count, MJ Stewart. They've said they're moving him back to safety.
Yeah, so you got MJ Stewart, you got Jordan Whitehead, you got Justin Evans, Isaiah Johnson,
and Kendall Bryce.
And
Buchanan.
And there's your 6.
Yeah.
And that's it. But after they signed him, they brought another one in the next day. So maybe Buchanan doesn't count.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you've signed, they signed 2. Yeah, they signed 2 safeties already, and then brought one in the next day. They're just not they're not drafting a safety. And I know the argument is, what if the best safety?
Are you talking about Isaiah Johnson?
What's that?
The second safety signing, are you talking about Isaiah Johnson?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because they didn't offer him a tender and then they brought him back.
Right.
I believe is what happened.
Okay.
So, yeah, I guess the argument is, well, if a safety falls down to him and they really like him, I've gone through the draft scenario about position of need. Like if a safety drops to you in the 3rd and you really like him, you already got Justin Evans, you already got Jordan Whitehead, you already got you're moving MJ Stewart back there,
yeah.
And in a pinch, you could put Buchanan back there. Then in the 3rd round, okay, so maybe you've drafted an interior defensive lineman and a guard. Well, you need a corner.
Yeah.
We're
back to that conversation we had earlier. We have spent a lot of draft capital in recent years on the safety position, just as we have on the cornerback position. Yeah. I feel much better about our safety position and where we are with our draft picks there than I do our cornerbacks, if I'm being frank. But, it's not a position I'm looking to spend a bunch of draft capital in this year again either.
Yeah. So if you play that out and say, okay, well, maybe a really good safety that they like drops to him in the 5th. Well, he's not a 5th-round safety. He's not starting over the guys you got signed.
Exactly.
So they're not drafting a safety. They're just not. It's not happening. I'm sorry. I get it. Okay, the be-all, end-all of safeties. Who is that? Name him. I don't know. You know why? Because I haven't looked at safeties. No one cares.
Right. We're set. We got our guys. So.
Derwin James is not in this draft.
Right.
It's don't worry about safety.
Right.
Don't worry about safety. Don't worry about tight ends. That's the only other position I would say we're absolutely not drafting anybody at is tight end.
Right.
After that, I would say wide receiver, but we'll see.
All right, Ren. Well, man, that's going to do it. That's our update with all the free agents and everything that the Buccaneers have done here over the last couple of weeks. I think it is safe to say, with the exception of whatever very low-level signings they will have between now and the draft, we're pretty much done.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, Ren. Well, with that, I tell you what, at this point, we'll turn this back to our listeners out there. We'll turn this back to you guys. What do you guys think about these various positions? Go back and what, all things being equal, what are the positions of need on this team? How would you rank them if everything was equal? What
are they ranking? They're ranking guard, interior linebacker, cornerback, and interior defensive line.
Yeah, those are the 4 that we rank. So, shoot us an email. Let us know how you guys would rank those. You can do that to thepewtercast@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter @thepewtercast or at facebook.com/thepewtercast. Ren, why don't you tell the fine folks out there where they can find you on the internet?
Yeah, and if you have a counter argument to anything of my logic that I've broken down about the interior linebacker or safety or interior defensive line, has to be the pick if you stay at 5, write an email. We'll talk about it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Best way to find me is on Twitter @Rendax, REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk some Buccaneers football.
And if you guys want to get a hold of me and tell me how batshit crazy I am for some of the things that I've said here on whether or not a defensive lineman or a linebacker or whatever, or that right guard position is a little bit higher, you guys can find me at Brent Allen Live on Twitter and on Instagram. And once again, the show is at The Pewtercast on Twitter, facebook.com/Pewtercast, and thepewtercast@gmail.com. Well, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. We got lots of stuff still coming up here in our off-season coverage. We got a big fun thing planned for the draft, Ren. We're still hammering out all the details of that, but that should be a fun thing. We're going to be splitting up this year, I think, is the leading idea. Trying to cover some of the various different activities going on.
Leader in the clubhouse.
Yeah, there we go. So we'll do that, and who knows? We've had a couple people ask us about the Super Mega Show that we had last year. If we're going to be bringing that back, and all of that kind of fun stuff. So you guys stay tuned. Lots of fun stuff coming up here in the off season. And until next time, guys, go Bucs.